to The Difference. Are there people in your life that made a difference in who you are? Are there circumstances that changed you for the better or for the worse? Are there stories that have become a part of who you are that without them you would not be the same? That's what we want to talk about today. What is it that makes us different?
You are listening to The Difference, a presentation of The Hour, a media platform that's been around for more than 50 years, Steve. First on radio, then on television, streaming on the Hour Stream platform found at thehour.org. You can go watch a lot of good stuff there. And now all the way back to audio once again on the Difference podcast. And Steve, again, as always, that's perfect for us as we have faces made for radio.
Yes, and you will not find a video to go with this anywhere.
And you're welcome.
Yes.
I'm Anthony Thaxton, and here's my good friend, brother, host, Steve Castillo.
And if you want to keep it that way, send money, and we will. It's a blackmail. You cannot. Anthony, last week we did our first podcast, and we talked about the whole idea of the difference and asked a lot of questions. Do you want to be different? What keeps you from being different? Today we want to kind of go fundamental and say, in all of our lives, there are people who came into our lives or whose lives we came into that changed us, that either over time or immediately had impact on how we think, on how we talk, how we act, and that if we don't acknowledge that, then we really can never know ourselves and be able to kind of offer ourselves to the world. So today, we're going to invite you to think about who are the difference in your life, and what are some of the stories that maybe you need to go back and revisit to kind of touchstone your life and remember what's really important to you and maybe why it is.
And so many times that might be parents, aunts, uncles, that sort of thing, family
Right.
members, older brother or sister who were strong influences. But a lot of times that was teachers or
Exactly.
Sunday school teachers or someone, pastors or one of my biggest influences early on was a gospel quartet, the Kingsmen from Asheville, North Carolina. And I was 9 years old and I saw them in concert for the first time. And yes, there was the showbizy aspect, businessy aspect of them hopping off the stage and singing in the loud highs and lows. And I was enthralled by the performance, but then at the record table afterwards and easing up there and speaking to them and watching them respond, and were so generous with their time and their comments and interacting with me, a 9-year-old kid. And I remember writing a fan letter to Ernie Phillips, who was the tenor at the time. And I was coming home from dove hunting one Saturday and got the mail, and there was a letter, a reply from him. And he had written me back and telling me what his favorite song was, answering all the questions I had asked. And it was just wonderful. We wrote many times, and then I followed the Kingsmen for years and years, and I made an appearance on one of their videos and all of this stuff, and am still friends with some of those guys. I did a funeral video that played at Ernie Phillips when he passed away. I did a tribute video, and they played it at his funeral service at Trinity Baptist Church in North Carolina. It was this full circle event of thinking back to that first experience, which also led to me becoming a Christian. I wanted to have what they had. I wanted to experience I wanted that joy in my life. And it started me walking the aisle at church and having those conversations, all from a gospel group of all things.
Well, and I think what you hit, you're the master of relationship. What I love is the artists you meet, the filmmakers you work with. They're not just colleagues in some kind of technique. They become friends. And those friendships begin to create meaningful exchanges that affect and change you. I was thinking about myself in terms of my dad, who I talk about a lot, Dad just at 90 years old just got remarried. And, he kind of surprised us and blew us away. But as I was sitting there looking at him and
And the
watching
fact
him,
that he had you be the ring bearer
it,
and walk
oh
down with
yeah,
that pillow,
yeah,
that
no,
was
well,
fun.
yeah, that was it. I mean, when he called me, um, we were sitting there talking, and I just was reminded of what a gregarious, thoughtful, caring person he was. He's called the mayor of Trinity, which is the assisted living place he is. And growing up, he is the one who kind of taught me about being different. He changed in front of my eyes time and time again. There's so many stories that I'll talk about later in some other arenas, but I can remember early on some of the first experiences that I had of outreach. Dad was working with a friend of his who worked with Head Start in Columbus, Dr. Jim Caleb, and they were going door to door surveying to find, and Head Start was a brand new thing, and it was in a season where a lot of integration was going on and it was really hard. And yet my dad took us with him to each of the houses, and
Wow.
and we met people. And not only did we meet them, but it ended up some people started working at the church that he had met there, and he knew their names, he knew their children's names. And so early on, I had the privilege of growing up around a person who was constantly thinking about how his actions impacted the people around him.
How does that not influence you?
Exactly.
I mean, it really does.
And it wasn't as if he were trying to be Father's knows best, because he was a hoot, but it was this sense that he could not do it, and he learned and grew all the time. His ministry became caring for the pastors and the people in the parsonage family, and even to this day, while he's in assisted living, the new pastor at the church he's at said, "Your dad came to me and just said, 'Is there anything I can do to make your transition easier?
How
Just
about
let
that?
me know.'" That made a difference.
That's incredible. And in our lives years, that Southern gospel influence was strong with me. I wanted to go to the Gospel Singers of America School of Gospel Music on the coast. We had no money. We couldn't afford it. My mom found a way for us to go. She went to the Gospel Singers of America School of Gospel Music and worked for those 2 weeks in the kitchen so that I could attend the school.
Wow.
So that giving, that
Mhm.
that sacrifice that you would see, I think now, there are so many things we get wrong as parents, and there's so
Exactly.
we dwell on those, but there are those times of giving that most of us can think back to with our
Mhm.
parents where we did learn that. And I know there, anytime you're talking about mothers or fathers, they did this prison thing one time where they offered Hallmark cards, or someone offered free cards on Mother's Day to inmates, and it was hugely successful. All the inmates sent cards to their mothers, and they said, "Great, on Father's Day we'll do that again." And it was a flop
Yeah.
because so many of them didn't have strong father figures and role models in their life, so they didn't care to send a Father's Day card. You know, there are both sides of that, and we all have those things where we've been disappointed and we've had bad experiences. But even so, even those things, as we are learning the people we want to be, sometimes it's even as much as learning, I don't want to be like that.
Right.
You
What
know,
not to do.
exactly. And I want to be different
Hmm.
than that. And I student taught under two teachers when I was at Mississippi College, and one of them was a gentleman, and I learned nothing. I thought I learned nothing because he was just not a good teacher, and I was just appalled, and I just kept reporting back to my professors about what a bad experience it was. And then I taught under Mary Jane Whitfield, which was wonderful. So she
Hmm.
became like a second mother to me. But thinking back, she affirmed a lot of things with me, the use of humor, and caring for kids and trying to teach a child and not a subject. You're trying to reach this
Right.
child, but not teach them art. you're teaching through art, but you're still trying to reach that child. So I had affirmations on how to be that difference maker from her. But looking back, I learned more from him about how I didn't want to be.
And I think that's one of the things you find out is difference can happen for the positive and the negative.
Yeah.
We can look in our lives and too see people who made a difference because of the things they did to us or through us that broke us and changed us. And yet those other people who, like I was talking about Dad, as you were talking, I had another stream of consciousness thought about him. I'd wanted to be an
engineer. You were
engineer.
thinking about something else other than what I was saying.
Yes, I was not listening. I was preparing
okay.
for my conversation.
I get that a lot.
Yeah, and so I was thinking I wanted to be an electrical engineer like my dad. So I went to state, flunked out. It was then I got my call to ministry. And I was really nervous to tell my parents about it. And so I came in and they were saying, oh, we were just waiting for you to tell us. And we knew that was what you want to do. And I redirected, went to Wood College, finished there, got my degree in social work and corrections, went to seminary. And it was only after I finished seminary that my grandma and my dad told me a story. Dad's dad had been called to ministry. And he died without accepting that call. And on his deathbed, he told Dad, you're going to have to go into the ministry. And my dad said, Dad, that's not my call. I can't do that. And Dad and Grandma said they refused to tell me that story until I'd finished seminary because they didn't want me to feel any pressure. They wanted to make sure that I was following my call, not trying to pick up Dad's call. But I will tell you, every time I think about that, I kind of put my chest out and go, Grandpa, I got this. I've got this. I took the call. And the fact that they were so thoughtful in what not to say and when to say it formed and shaped and allowed me to be myself, different from what he was going to be, rather than him trying to make me into what he wished I was.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
Yeah,
no, I'm just kidding. Isn't that great? What a cool story.
Yeah.
And the fact of them waiting and not not wanting to influence you, that's an
and my
incredible
grandmother's
story.
letter. I have this box of good stuff, and I keep that letter. And every once in a while, I just go back and look at it to be reminded all the way back to the beginning. Our first show of that scripture in Romans 12. Don't be conformed to this world. Just take your everyday walking around, eating, drinking, and sleeping life, and make that your offering to God. And they allowed me to do it, mistakes and all. And that offering of letting me be different, of letting me do it in my own time, of letting me make my mistakes and learn the hard way was all part of the gift that helped me become who I am.
And it's hard allowing our children and allowing people around us go through that time of making mistakes or failing.
Right.
And then moving forward, like we mentioned, the Unfailing book that Shane and I released recently through Whitaker House, and there is that sense of failure is not the end of something. And the Bible talks about the unfailing love of God. In our failures, we have one who is unfailing. Right. And what are we supposed to learn through this? And what's on the other side of that? What's the flip side of that? I'm going through all the many titles that we had.
Well, and what I love is your illustration in there of how many filaments did Edison use before he found?
It was like 600 or something. And then, so he found all those ways that didn't work.
Right.
Well, I had one of those kinds of experiences in my life. We were helping with a community of believers called Eagle Ridge Community Church, and we were meeting out at Hines in an auditorium out there on Sundays, and Mark Simpson and Brian Presson were two great guys who were leading that service, and Brian was preaching and Mark was kind of assisting and counseling, and just two great guys. And I was doing the graphics work. So I would do a little bulletin and do a design and for the sermon title and print out those, and we would distribute those on Sunday, and we would leave spaces for people to fill in little listening notes. And Brian was preaching on Fan the Flame. And so I made out the sheet and had this beautiful flame and all. And at the bottom, he said, I want you to leave a couple of lines where they can write something when I give them the question. And I said, great. So I did that. We printed, we handed it out, and I played bass, and then I sat down and listened to the sermon. And his question was, it was fanning this flame. What is that desire that you have within you that you need to fan that flame and make that larger? What is that you just can't, it never goes out, but you've got this innate desire to do this something. Maybe that's something God wants you to do, so fanning that flame. And his question was that he posed us and said, everybody get out a pen or pencil and write down, if you could do anything for God, what would it be? And I thought, and I didn't know at the time that there was such a thing as media ministers at churches. I had always been at these small churches, but I had started seeing Life Church in Oklahoma and started seeing their outreach with ministry and the use of media. And I said, I would do, positive media. I would do some kind of media. I didn't say media minister or something because I wasn't called to be a minister, but I would do some kind of communications and let it have meaning, let it be inspirational. That's what I would do for God. After the service, I'm packing up my bass and all, and everybody's dispersing, and Mark and Brian approach me, and as they're walking over there to me, Brian said, "Hey, Anthony, what you write down for the question at the end of the service? If you could do anything for God, what would it be?" And I read that to them, and then Brian said, "I preached this sermon for you." And I think since then I've had a lot of pastors preach things at me for different reasons, but they planned that whole thing so that I would have to articulate and write down and condense and decipher and focus in on what I felt God was having for me to do. And I just wept. I could that they had gone through such effort for me to be able to articulate that. The next day I got a phone call about coming and talking about being the director of communications at First Baptist of Hattiesburg. They had a television channel. They had all these things, and I thought, I don't know how to run a television channel, but I looked at the equipment, and they said, "Can you do this?" And I thought in my mind, yeah, I'll be able to do this. And I said, yes, I can do this. And I did. I ran that channel. I operated that. And so many good stories came out of that. But my whole life changed because of that one sermon that snuck up on me. And I had these two wonderful men pouring love and encouragement into me.
And I think as you say that, I want to loop back to our scripture again, the whole idea of making ourselves an offering to Christ, to God, that since we all have a call, but it's always in the context of God's, as Wesley would say, prevenient grace, that we have a God who goes ahead of us and prepares a place.
Right.
And whether it's a place of where we're going to go vocationally, or whether it's into a place of fear and brokenness where we walk, part of what we both believe makes the difference is the God that's around us. I think of a simple story. You've heard me tell it before. When my family moved to Columbus, Mississippi in 1964.
Possum Town.
Yes, Possum Town. And it was in the middle of the year, and I was a skinny, toe-headed, big-eared, awkward kid, and I dreaded every minute of it. I'm very introverted, and my whole thing, I tried to be class clown to act out, but I walked down, just like it was yesterday, walking down the hall of that new school at Fairview Elementary and walking to the 4th grade door, and there standing in the door was Miss Ruth Webb. And she took my hand, and of course, as a 4th grade boy, that's very awkward, and I didn't pull away, but she walked in and she said, "Class, this is our new student, Steve Castile, and I want you to welcome him." And as if it were a Broadway play, the whole class stood up and began to sing "Getting to Know You" from Isaac King and I, and My Fair Lady, one of those two.
Yeah.
And they're singing it authentically and looking at me, and I'm just like, what? And when she's finished, she introduces me to everybody in the class and then takes me and she sits me down, and we were seated alphabetically at the time, and Laura Bobo sat in front of me, and she said, "Laura, I want you to make sure Steve has somebody to sit with him at lunch. And on the playground behind me, was a young man said, I want you to play with him on the playground. And then she went back to teaching the class.
Talk about intentionality.
Now, I'll be 69 in a few weeks. I still feel it like I was yesterday. You want to talk about a difference? Somebody who intentionally knew where I was,
Right.
and made a difference by taking what could have been a very awkward, alienating moment and made it an open door. I stayed in the same homeroom with that class, which is the way you did it, all the way through to high school. And some of my deepest, best friends were there because Miss Webb opened the door. And after I'd finished school and had gone into the ministry, I got a letter from Miss Ruth Webb saying, I am so proud of you. It was such an honor to teach you, and I know your parents are proud. Now, that's that made a difference.
Yes. Do you think it was that she just sensed, she knew that they wouldn't like you, and that
was it. She saw those ears and was like, "Dear Lord, Dumbo's got competition.
I've got to intervene
Bless his
here."
heart. They'll have a nickname for him by lunch.
I mean, you think about how incredibly intentional that was and what a difference that made, and what a difference it made for them, and giving students permission. I can say to my daughter, yes, you can write a novel, which she did. Kids need permission sometimes. Yes, of course you can do this. You can write a soundtrack to a movie. You can do this. Sometimes they need permission for that, but sometimes it is okay for you to like this new student. And I think you should. I think you're going to like this person. And you're setting everyone up for success like that. That's an incredible story.
Well, I mean, she had created an expectation. That was a lesson. And the thing was that it happened with every new student that came. Everybody was welcomed.
Yeah.
And, it just impressed upon me the importance of the intentionality of making a difference intentionally. It's not something that happens accidentally. And when I think about this from the divine perspective, we talk about God going ahead of us, what happened with you, and that invitation and that question was not an accident. Mm-mm. And it's not like God's up there, the great puppet master. But what God is that Miss Ruth Webb standing in the hallway saying, hey, come in, let me introduce you. Let me put you in a place where the rest of your life can be changed by the people around you, and do everything in my power to make that happen.
Yeah. It's just remarkable. When we were working, we had the Hour building at one point. Mm-hmm. All right, so the Hour is responsible for the difference and us being together. Well, we had a building at one point which we sold, but they would film there, and it was a restaurant at one time. We've been through some crazy iterations over the years. I got a call one day when I first started working with the Hour, and it was Joseph Gregory's wife. We had a teacher in my third grade year who had a heart attack, and she was replaced by this man coming in. He had been in the Army for 21 years and was a sergeant, and then had some kind of teaching program, and then came to be our third grade teacher. And he was also an artist. And I would finish my test first and zip through the test, and then I would draw on the back of the test, and it was my first feedback. I remember one time him saying, you've kind of drawn him with kind of a hog nose. See how his nose looks like a snout of a hog? And at first I was just crushed, and he's like, let me show you kind of better how to do that. So I would intentionally study hard to finish my test because I would get this feedback from him. My parents were not artists. My dad was a football coach and all, but here was this man and he would ask my dad, I've got these art books. Can I give those to him? And, and then when I became a fifth grader, he moved up and taught fifth grade. So I had him again, and he was so influential in my life as an artist, and he would bring in paintings and he would show me things. And the famous artist course were 3 binders of books. Norman Rockwell was one of the professors in that course and all, and it was a mail-in, a mail order kind of thing, and you would send your entries and all. Well, the program had long been defunct, but he had these books that cost $100 a piece back in the 50s when he got them.
Wow.
And he gave me those 3 binders, the red, the blue, and the yellow. I can't tell you, but I studied those books. I pored over those books, and here was somebody, and I get the phone call, and he had passed away, but his wife had seen an episode of The Hour with me painting on The Hour and wanted to call and said, I have a painting in my bedroom that he kept in our bedroom, one that you did when you were in 5th grade, and is this the same Anthony Thaxton? And she was calling all those years. So I was able to, and I had hunted him and tried to find him and couldn't, but I was able to relay to her how grateful I was. And it was this special moment of being able to say thank you. But I want to encourage everyone listening. One time Fred Rogers was given a Lifetime Achievement Award or something at the Emmys. And as he comes on stage, he's talking about those people who got him there, those people that poured into him and loved him. He said, all of you have people like that have helped you get here. And he said, I want us for 15 seconds just to have a few moments of silence, and I want you to think about and be thankful for those people.
Yeah. Wow.
And the cameras pan across all of these Hollywood stars, tears streaming down their face with just a moment of silence, thinking about those who cared and got them. We've all had someone pour into us to get us to where we are. If you are living and breathing and hearing this, you have survived many things. And who are those people? We're sharing today, and we're wrapping up about some of the folks that have poured into us. Who are some of those folks in your life who have done that for you? And how can you either A, give them roses while they can still smell them, or B, how can you repay them through caring for someone else and passing that on?
I never underestimate that. It's funny you said that. About 4 months ago, the phone rang, and I didn't recognize it. Usually I worry about spam people, but I answered. And the voice said, is this the brother Steve that was the scoutmaster in Matheson?
Oh, wow.
Now, that was back when I was in just out of junior college and going to school at State. And I said, yeah, who is this? And he introduced himself, and he said, I was at church, and they were saying, if somebody made a difference in your life, call them and tell them. So I'm calling you to say, I know we were a rowdy bunch. I know you and Miss Cindy had your hands full. I know you didn't always want to go camping with us, but I will never forget the fact that we always had a safe place on Monday nights, and that you two were always there and having fun with us. And when he hung up, I was in tears.
Yeah.
And so never think that kind of appreciation doesn't bear fruit. And so we really do think about this. We get so caught up in our everyday life. It's so easy to find what's wrong and who pisses us off and who makes us angry. It's a lot more difficult to pause and to think about those people who poured themselves into us and who changed us and made us different. And so we want to go a step beyond that. Not only pause, write them a letter, give them a phone call, send them a text, but then also, hey, send us some of those stories.
Yes.
Tell us some of the stories of the people that made a difference in your life. And whenever we all hear it, it inspires us and reminds us that none of us walk alone, that none of us have made it through this life without somebody pouring something into us, no matter how crazy our life has been. So, on the end of this episode of The Difference, think about the difference in your life and thank them for it and share their names with us.
My heart was strangely warmed.
And as always, hey, remember, live loved.
The Difference podcast is brought to you by The Hour, time that makes the difference. Over 50 years of broadcast and programming is available online at OurStream, our streaming platform located at thehour.org. This podcast was recorded in the studios of the Institute for Southern Storytelling at Mississippi College. The Institute is committed to telling positive, uplifting stories through the creative means of television, writing, artwork, music, and film. Find out more about the Institute for Southern Storytelling at southernstorytelling.mc.edu. I'm Anthony Thaxton. Thank you for joining us on the Difference podcast.